This two-time Mr. Universe winner was once one of the most popular bodybuilders in the world. Known for his incredible size and strength, he left an indelible mark on the sport and inspired countless individuals to pursue their own fitness goals. Since he'd done so well for himself, it appeared he'd be able to enjoy a very comfortable retirement. Sadly, just a few years later, he'd end up behind bars, awaiting execution. Bertil Fox was born on January 5, 1951, on the eastern Caribbean island of St. Kitts. He emigrated to London, England with his family when he was just 1 year old. He grew up in Kilburn in North London in a modest household with his parents and siblings. Unfortunately, his father would pass away when Bertil was 14. From a young age, Bertil showed an interest in physical fitness and strength training. He would often be found lifting weights or engaging in various physical activities. It was during this time that he discovered his passion for bodybuilding. It would be in his second home, the gym, where he got the chance to meet some of his bodybuilding idols, including Arnold Schwarzenegger and Rick Wayne. As a dedicated bodybuilder, Bertil would eat 10 times a day, train 14 times per week, and took steroids to keep up with the competition. However, there was another side to his life that he wasn't dealing with very well at all. At 20, Bertil was already a father. He was never around much though, as bodybuilding took him away from home quite a bit. One thing he did make sure to do was to financially support his family. He did so by working as a train driver on the London Underground. Make no mistake, he hated it. His intention was to work a regular 9 to 5 only for as long as he needed to, as his heart always belonged to bodybuilding. He knew it would only be a matter of time before he made it big. By his mid-20s, Bertil had won almost every title Britain had to offer. His relentless pursuit of muscle had made him the most loved bodybuilder in the UK. Then he entered Mr. Universe, the toughest and most prestigious British title. At the age of 27, he won the professional title in 1978. In comparison to other bodybuilders of his time, Bertil's size and proportions were considered exceptional. He had a thick, dense muscle mass that gave him a commanding presence on stage. He was even nicknamed Brutal Bertil due to his aggressive and intense training style. Even though in the bodybuilding world he was now a star, Bertil was forced to continue driving trains for a living, as there wasn't much money in his passion. One thing he could enjoy was the glamorous side of the sport, which included his pick of young, attractive women. One woman in particular, named Kim, set her sights on him. Within 3 months, Bertil would leave his girlfriend and 3 children to marry her. Her influence on him also extended to his career. She wanted him to move to the United States, as he'd been offered a contract by Joe Weider, a Canadian bodybuilder, entrepreneur, and co-founder of the IFBB, International Federation of Bodybuilders. Bertil, though, wasn't too keen on the change, since he'd always had reservations about American bodybuilding. As a champion bodybuilder, Rick Wayne was already contracted to Joe Weider's company, so Joe asked Rick to persuade Bertil to cross the pond. But Rick soon realized that he was wasting his time going directly to Bertil, so he asked Kim to give it a try. 2 weeks later, the paperwork was signed, and Bertil landed in Los Angeles in 1981, ready to start a new chapter of his life and career. Over the next 13 years, he'd compete in well over a dozen IFBB shows. His highest placings would happen early on, in the 1982 Night of Champions and the 1983 Swiss Grand Prix, where he'd placed second. Also in 1983, at the age of 32, Bertil made his second appearance at the toughest competition in the world, Mr. Olympia. He would come in 5th, but neither him nor his fans were happy with that result.
In 5th place, Bertil Fox, England.
After the loss, he started to openly criticize the bodybuilding establishment.
You know, your whole future depends on those 5 or 10 little guys that lies there. Your whole fate lies in them. These guys have never trained. They've never worked out. They don't know what the word diet means. They don't know what it means to diet till your head begins to spin. I think the sport is our sport, right, and we should judge it. We should have more say in the sport that we made, because we are bodybuilding, and we should be judged by our peers. A guy would feel a little bit more better to know, well, that he's being put in 12th place by good guys, you know, than some fat guy in a blue jacket who's never trained, never done anything, who puts you and says, you should be a little bit more cut and shit like this.
It was during the months after Bertil's failure at Mr. Olympia that Rick became privy to what was going on behind closed doors in Bertil's marriage. Kim was being regularly subjected to her husband's physical abuse. Even after 1983's disappointing outcome at Mr. Olympia, the pressure was still on Bertil to make an appearance in the competition in 1984. That is, until he suffered a major setback during training. Kim left him. Not surprisingly, Bertil didn't take the news well. He opted to break his contract and not compete that year in Mr. Olympia. While Bertil would make a total of 5 Olympia appearances, he'd never placed better than he did in 1983. In 1989, his last Olympia appearance, he wouldn't even make the top 10.
What is it that keeps you going?
It's love. It's hard. I've had more setbacks. I don't think they can do anything more with Bertil Fox. You know, I turn up in shape. When I turn big, they say, oh, you haven't got enough cuts. When I turn up in cut, they say, oh, he's too lean. Because these people can destroy you. They can play trick with your mind. You can be in great shape, and they got you and they ignore you.
Hey, tip for fuck's sake.
Bodybuilding is something that I love, and that's what's keeping me going. Not the fame and all this bullshit of walking around like some of these prima donnas, these little shit who win a little contest and they go around like they shit don't smell and things like that. You know, what keeps me going is love.
Retiring from the stage at the age of 43 in 1994, he returned to St. Kitts for the first time since he was a toddler. Little did Bertil know, it was to be his worst move yet. The motivation for returning to his place of birth was to give back and train up the young men to become champion bodybuilders. He also believed that by returning to the island, he would finally find somewhere to fit in and get the respect he deserved. He bought some land outside the capital, Basseterre, and started to build his dream home and gym, sinking all the money he'd ever made into the construction. As much work as the project was, Bertil still found time for the ladies. A local woman caught his eye, a swimsuit model named Leoka Brown. He was 42, she was 19. She moved in with Bertil despite her family's disapproval. Things took a downward turn over the next 2 years, though, as rumors swirled that he was physically abusing her, and she was unfaithful to him. At one point, Leoka's mother, Violet, intervened. This time, Leoka took her mother's advice and left Bertil. At first, he seemed to take the news well, remaining on good terms with Leoka. When he made a trip back to England for a break, he even asked her to watch over his home and possessions. On September 27, 1997, Bertil came back from his trip to England. 3 days later, he visited Leoka at her mother's design shop. Only Bertil knows what happened next. Just after 10 a.m., Basseterre police received a 911 call that 2 people had been shot at the location. The injuries turned out to be fatal. Leoka was shot in the back, and Violet was shot twice, once in the leg and once in the neck. Many news sources actually referred to Leoka as Bertil's fiancé, or former fiancé. Bertil was charged with the murders. While everyone on the island followed the trial, they didn't necessarily focus on the facts. Some people chose to believe rumors and gossip, especially the unfavorable things said about Leoka. Bertil hired the best and most expensive lawyer on the island, Dr. Henry Brown. At the trial, Bertil made a statement that when he returned to St. Kitts from England, he noticed his gun was missing from his home. Looking for an explanation, he went to find Leoka, who was in her mother's shop. He said Leoka's mother had it and refused to give it back. A fight broke out, and the gun went off accidentally. That trial ended in a hung jury. On May 22, 1998, Bertil was ultimately convicted in a second trial in the High Court of St. Christopher and Nevis of the murders of Leoka and her mother, and was sentenced to the death penalty, the automatic punishment for murder in St. Kitts and Nevis. The following year, the Death Penalty Project began assisting Bertil and provided free legal representation to challenge his mandatory death sentence to the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council. In March 2002, in a landmark judgment, the Privy Council allowed his appeal and ruled that his mandatory death sentence was unconstitutional. In September of that same year, Bertil was resentenced in the High Court and given 2 life sentences. In resentencing him, the judge placed substantial weight on medical evidence from his psychiatric report. A UK-based forensic psychiatrist completed an assessment which highlighted how Bertil's prolonged use of anabolic steroids from the age of 14 had diminished his responsibility. Behind bars, Bertil wrote a 24-page handwritten letter to Flex chief photographer Chris Lund, detailing his version of what happened on that tragic day when 2 lives ended and his life changed forever. It tells a story of the murders, their reportage, and the events surrounding them in Bertil's own words. He's very critical of what he perceives as the unfair reportage he and his trial received, especially stories frequently referencing roid rage and the presumed aggression and insecurity of bodybuilders. One of the people Bertil singles out is Rick Wayne. In a British TV documentary, Death in the Bodybuilder, Rick claimed Bertil dislikes white people. But Bertil writes, "I have never told him that. I am no bloody racist. You know that. Please, if you write anything from these letters, please put that straight for me. Most of my friends are white, including girlfriends." Bertil alleges that the judge and the jury at the second trial were biased against him. The foreperson was a friend of the family of the murder victims. 2 other jurors reportedly complained to the judge regarding this conflict, but the judge refused to intervene. Bertil writes, "In the Caribbean, with a small island like St. Kitts, where everybody knows everybody, it's very dangerous, especially for someone like me who did not grow up here and just came here to open a business, bought land, and built premises. It's who you know and who knows you that counts in these parts of the world." My conviction was because of an opportunistic liar called Edmund Tross, who was supposed to be a friend, and his girlfriend, Juliska Wallace, and their greed for my gym, business, and property. And the corrupt, flawed jury system that they use here that I mention about at the start of the letter. When the incident happened, I had no one to run the gym for me, and I had to keep the gym open because of a small mortgage I had to pay on the premises because of that same Edmund Tross. But that's another story. According to Bertil, Tross, an electrician by trade, said he wanted to take financial control of his gym, house, and money to protect it from a potential lawsuit from the victim's family. But Bertil refused. Instead, he put the property in the name of his eldest daughter, Dorette, and he gave Tross power of attorney to withdraw money from his bank account to pay for his defense. Tross then allegedly turned Dorette against her father and convinced her to sell him Bertil's property for a fraction of its worth. Tross was a witness for the prosecution in the preliminary trial, first trial, and the retrial. He was allowed to change his testimony each time. In the retrial, he claimed Bertil confessed to the murders because he discovered Leoka was seeing another man. However, no such man was named or came forward. Furthermore, just before the second trial drew to a close, there was a surprise witness who had not testified in the preliminary trial or previous trial, Juliska Wallace. She said she saw Bertil with the gun shortly before the shootings, and he supposedly told her he was going to kill his ex-girlfriend. The judge did not allow Bertil to take the stand again to refute Wallace's allegations. Prosecutors alleged Bertil was despondent when Leoka ended their relationship. In their version, he, in a jealous rage, brought his pistol to Violet's clothing store where Leoka worked. Another employee, Amanda Matthews, was in the clothing store when the shootings occurred. As a prosecution witness, she testified that she did not see Bertil with a gun. She did see him speak to Leoka, reportedly not in an angry tone, but she couldn't hear what was said. Violet then confronted Bertil and said, "Don't come in here with that." Bertil then allegedly pushed her. Amanda heard a shot, and she ran and locked herself in a restroom. At this point in the letter, Bertil goes into his explanation of what happened that fateful day. "Now let me tell you, Chris, how the incident happened. I had to go to England on a business trip to buy things for the gym. On my return on the Friday, Leoka was not at the house. Now she came on the Saturday morning in her brother's car and said to me she was staying at her mother's, and she had come for her things because she wanted to think things over and stay with her mother until she could make up her mind what to do. I helped her pack her clothes. Now this bit, what I just said, I did not say in court. I was told by my lawyer to leave that out and just start when I found my gun missing and went to Leoka's mother's shop to see if she had the gun and pouch. The pouch was really, you know, those money bags bodybuilders use to put around their waist to put money in. That is what I left the gun in. Now, me and Leoka were having some problems because of her mother, who was always putting things in her head and was always wanting to loan money from me and was telling her daughter I would never marry her, that as soon as I saw some other young thing in the gym, I will leave her. Leoka was obsessed with being married, so I gave her a check to buy an engagement ring. Now, after I found my gun missing from the bedroom drawer, I immediately went to Leoka's mother's shop to see Leoka. Let me tell you something. I did not go to Leoka's mother's shop with any malicious or willful intentions in my heart. Nobody was more sorry and devastated about what happened than me. As soon as I arrived in the reception area, Leoka immediately stopped what she was doing and came to meet me. We talked and greeted each other and went outside the shop, and I asked her if she had my pouch with gun and keys, etc. She said yes. I asked her where they are. She said she gave them to her mother for safekeeping. I said, could I have it now? She said, sure, follow me. She went back in the shop with me behind her. She made a right turn. As Leoka was about to enter a door, her mother came out. Her mother had the pouch in one hand and the gun in the other, and she waved them about and said to me, are these what you want? Are these what you want? Leoka turned towards me and put her hand on my shoulder, as if to stop me going any farther. Her mother, in turn, pushed me with the hand she had the gun in over Leoka's shoulder and said to Leoka, don't come in here with that, meaning me. As her hand was coming back from pushing me over Leoka's shoulder, I made a grab for the gun and pouch. She resisted. The gun went off and Leoka got shot. I was still trying to get the gun from her when it went off again. Her mother fell down and dropped the gun and pouch. I picked up the gun and pouch, panicked, and ran out of the shop. I was heading towards a U.S. friend who had a business near Tross's workshop, but because of traffic, I ended up at Tross's workshop. Tross was not there. A guy that works there told me. I said to the guy, phone Tross. Leoka and her mother have been shot. I was in shock. My head was spinning. I just sat down on something in the shop until Tross arrived. When he came, we went into a little room he calls an office. I said to him, Leoka and her mother just got shot. He said, what? What happened? I said, Leoka's mother had my gun, and I tried to get it from her, and Leoka got shot. He shook his head and asked something else. I can't remember. He asked me for the gun, and I gave him the gun with the pouch, and he said, fat boy, I gotta take you to the police station. I said, okay, and we drove to the station. I never said one word to him from his workshop to the station. Bertil, though, fails to answer crucial questions regarding this scenario. Why did Leoka take his gun and its pouch from his house? And why would she then give these items to her mother for safekeeping? Why would he struggle with someone with her finger on the trigger of a gun? Did he think she would shoot him if he gave up his hold? How exactly was the gun fired during the struggle? Did his grip cause Violet to pull the trigger? What about the shots he didn't account for? After what he claims was a tragic accident, why didn't he try to help the victims or call an ambulance? Perhaps Bertil has answers for these questions, among others, but they aren't provided in his letter. There are problems with the prosecution's case as well. There were no autopsies and no conclusive fingerprints from the gun. The witness did not see Bertil with a gun just before the shootings, and his clothing, tank top and spandex pants, would not have easily concealed a handgun, nor was he described as emotional at the time. Why would he tell Jaliska Wallace that he was going to kill his ex-girlfriend? Furthermore, why did she present this evidence only at the end of the retrial? And why wasn't Bertil allowed to answer her charge on the stand? What about the conflicted interests of prosecution witness Tross, who benefited economically from Bertil's imprisonment, and the jury foreperson who had a connection to the victims? Did the general climate on the small island, including frequent protests by women's groups, it being the biggest news story for months, the jury not being sequestered, and the judge's comments possibly being prejudicial, prevent an impartial outcome in the retrial? If, as the second jury concluded, Bertil murdered 2 people, it is difficult to feel sympathy for him. If, as he contends, the gun was fired by Violet Brown during the course of a struggle, then his crime was manslaughter at worst, and most possibly no crime at all. There is another possibility that does not preclude either of those scenarios. Bertil returned to the tiny island of his birth as a celebrity and an outsider, and after the gun went off, he grew enmeshed in a web of media hysteria, financial malfeasance, and legal prejudice. Bertil concludes his letter saying, I tell you, I curse the day and damn the hour I ever came back to this corrupt place they call St. Kitts. Today, no one besides the man convicted of 2 murders knows for certain if the reporters, his so-called friends, The judge and the jury ultimately denied or delivered justice. On August 4, 2022, Bertil was pardoned by the Governor General of St. Kitts and Nevis after serving 25 years. There were no official reports of his pardon, but the news was said to be first reported by fellow competitive bodybuilder Gary Stridham and then confirmed by Bertil's son, Sean Fox. 73-year-old Bertil Fox is now a free man, living in the UK with his family.